Hey, good morning everyone. So I'm going to be at SRS next week, so I wanted to do a quick update regarding some of the things that are going on in surgical robotics, but there's one thing in particular that I'm going to say, and this is going to upset a lot of the companies out there that are competing with Intuitive. What I've been absolutely amazed about is the Da Vinci 5 and how fast it has become accepted and adopted, and the almost flawless rollout of this product. So if you're in medical devices, you need to see this is how you roll out a product. And if I was one of the companies selling against them, one of the mainframes, one of the modular systems, I would be absolutely, utterly and totally terrified, because the game is over. So what's been amazing is that in the last quarter, again, I've seen multiple deals, 15 going into one system, 5 into another system, making a total of 6, by the way, for that system at Advent Health. This is just unprecedented, amazing numbers. But what it shows is that the customers are seeing that Da Vinci 5 is the future. They're seeing that the feature set that it brings, the tower, force feedback, everything about Da Vinci 5 just seems to be hitting the nail on the head for the customers. And yes, there will have been pent up people waiting for the Da Vinci 5, waiting to get their XI, and then thinking, well, I'll hold on for the Da Vinci 5. But these are unprecedented numbers, and you have to understand just how massive this really is. Now, again, I'll say it again, there was a group of execs in one of the companies that I heard that sat around their table laughing at the Da Vinci 5, basically saying it's a white XI with a funny console. Gosh, these guys have really messed up. I think you were wrong. This is a serious piece of kit, and I still predict that maybe half of the features are not even turned on yet because of regulatory, not because of technical. But already with just what's turned on with the force feedback, with the tower, with the advanced insufflation, with the components that all talk to each other, with the improved screen, all of these things are exciting enough based upon the stability of the system and based upon the fact that it can do all the procedures the XI can do. And I'll come back to that a bit later. But basically, what's been amazing about this launch is that, first of all, the marketing's been superb. But the second thing that I've just found amazing, and as someone who has actually been involved with implementing robots, is how you implement 5 robots at a time is absolutely impressive. It's no mean feat. It's actually pretty difficult. So therefore, being able to do that is quite amazing. So what you have to understand as well is that besides basically flawless marketing, they've been at every show, and every show has been fantastic. Their marketing and their branding is utterly and totally amazing over the way they've done the Da Vinci 5 launch. And yeah, they've got the money to do it, of course they have, and they've got the experience, and they're building on the shoulders of some other people. I think some of their marketing does look a little bit like some of the marketing we did back in my day. But what's amazing is this is a new product, so they've had to get a manufacturing line up, and it looks like they're keeping up with demand. And I think that they obviously are going to cap a little bit the amount of product they're going to make and that they're going to get out there immediately. But my calculation is they've got over 50 systems already in the first couple of quarters that are out there. So up until June, since their launch, I think there's over 50 systems that are out there. So that gives me a prediction. I think we could see 200 systems, even if it's artificially capped, but 200 systems could be out there in the US field by the end of the year. Top end, maybe 250. And that is more than everybody else in the world will probably do with all their systems together. You've got to let that sink in just for a second. One company with a new product that's capped is going to sell more systems, install more systems than all the other companies together in the world. That's impressive. So I think that it's going to be a huge feature at SRS, and SRS is absolutely, and of course, one of the main events we're going to see this year. We're going to see some of the Chinese robots there at SRS. I'm excited to go and see some like Ronovo, Robotics and Carina. I think that's a really nice system. But there's just no way that anybody can get close to beating Da Vinci now. It's set for the next 10 years. And I want to come back a little bit to what I said earlier about the fact that it's not just the technology, it's not just the fact that they've done flawless execution, flawless manufacturing, implementation of 5 systems at once. Wow, that's tough, 15 in other places, and they're already up and running and doing complex cases. It's the fact that anyone who's used an XI can just jump on this tomorrow and get going. I think that the other barrier for everyone else who's trying to get into the US is that they have got the broad clearance of procedures. And I still don't know if that's sunk into everybody yet, of just why that is so important. So if a hospital was going to, or is using an XI, tomorrow they can use a Da Vinci 5 for exactly the same procedures. And that's really important, because to make a robotics program in a hospital viable, it has to be able to do a broad amount of procedures. And if you can't do a broad amount of procedures, you can't make a viable program. So when all the new competitors come out in the US and they do their launch, then basically what they're going to do is they're going to come out with maybe 1 procedure or 2 procedures. And I just can't see how anyone goes to a hospital with a proper commercial product, of course for clinical studies, of course to be one of the first, that those small things can happen. Or if they're friends of a big company like a Medtronic or a J&J, then of course that there'll be a couple of systems will go in. But as a commercially viable system where you'll get 15 or 5 placements, the hospital's going to turn around and say, well, okay, so we can do urology with it. Well, what about colorectal? What about upper GI? What about hernia? What about gynecology? What about transoral? And the only one that can do that and do it well is Da Vinci 5. So you have to understand that the Da Vinci 5, it's got technological superiority to everybody, but it's also got this fact that it's got the broad procedure clearance. And you need to take that as absolutely one of the most important things. That's why you're seeing such a big rollout of the Da Vinci 5, because it's just, you can just drop it in where you would have had an XI. No other system's going to be able to do that, and that's absolutely going to make it a huge barrier for anybody else that wants to try and compete there. And again, I think this has just been missed by some of the execs around the table. They've not understood the true dynamics of what that means to the marketplace. So as I say, my prediction is that Intuitive is going to carry on this steady march. I think they've got a lot of already built up orders that were XIs that people wanted, and they were holding off and waiting for a Da Vinci 5. I think they've worked on a lot of these orders for a while, but I think they're going to start this steady march. And my other prediction is that most of these are going to go under leases. I mean, if you've got 15 systems going in, they're under some kind of lease or pay-per-click or some kind of long-term deal where the capital is not paid up front. And Intuitive is the only company that can do this. There's anyone with a balance sheet that's going to allow them to do it, and an install base where you can put the capital in, yet the rest of their business marches along because they've got such a huge install base of about 10,000 systems throwing off cash for them. So that's another massive barrier for anyone who's going to compete, because if you're in this game now with your mainframe large format robot that you are wanting to compete with Da Vinci 5, then not only have you got the technological barriers and you've got no force feedback, so you can't compete on that, you've got no insufflator, you can't compete on that, you've not got the breadth of procedures, you can't compete on that. But Intuitive are going to absolutely starve the oxygen away from any company. Doesn't matter if you're J&J or you're Medtronic or you're a small company like Medicaroid. There is no more capital sales that you're going to be able to do. And what that means is you're going to have to put that all on your balance sheet up front. Intuitive can do it. They can easily do it. The other companies are going to really struggle. Yeah, of course, J&J and Medtronic have got huge balance sheets. But the problem is, it's how it affects it on a quarterly basis in the initial ramp up. And because your volume and install base is almost zero, down in the low, maybe 100 somewhere, the revenue stream coming off those 100 is so low that it doesn't make up for the rest. So that's the 25-year gap that Intuitive got on that. So again, why do I think this is a flawless execution? Because they've nailed it on everything. Ecosystem, they've nailed it on technology, they've nailed it on making it so that you can literally, if you can drive an XI, you can drive a DV5. They've nailed it in terms of the marketing. They've nailed it in terms of launch. They're nailing it in terms of implementation of large numbers, and no other company can do that. They don't have the proctors, they don't have the training, they don't have the infrastructure to do such large numbers of implementations. They have the team that are there, the implementation clinical specialists. They have the sales teams that can then close the contracts. All of this has to be built by everybody else. So the moat that Gary talked about many times, I think it's real. I think that it's just going to be so hard for anybody to now catch up with Da Vinci, and I think that's why. And again, go into some more because it's a bit of an SRS special. But why do I think that? Why do I think that some of the other companies are clever? So if you look at Moon Surgical or DistalMotion Dexter, they're not going to try and go head to head with Da Vinci because that would just be futile. So instead, what they're going to do is they're going to go around and find another area. So, advancing laparoscopy, and I think both of those systems can do it in two different ways. But basically what you're doing is you're adding on to laparoscopy rather than moving to robotic assisted surgery that can also do laparoscopy. Subtle difference. I think some of the mini systems are also going to be quite interesting. So I think something like a virtual incision and a mirror, that's coming at it in a different way. The vicarious surgical, sort of slightly on the SP side of things, but I think mirror is very different because it's really a zero footprint. It's tiny, and it's also to do with the fact that you can have 10 of them sitting in any operating block at any time, and they can basically have them ready to go at any point. So it's about convenience, it's turnover and things like that. So I think that the companies that are going to come at this with a different approach are also the ones that are potentially going to be able to nip around the edges, and there's lots of procedures out there for people to go after. But my prediction is that anyone who's trying to go against Da Vinci in the US, and they're going against Da Vinci 5, are going to struggle big time. Now, outside of the US, which is a lot of people ask me about, there's no Da Vinci 5 yet, but all those XIs that will get upgraded over the next year or two are going to find their way into a secondary market, and those secondary markets are going to be things like Latin America. They're going to be things like Europe, and maybe even some go out to Asia. So there'll be reconditioned, pre-loved XIs that will go in, and again, they will all go in on leases. So if you think you're going to be selling your robot in one of these markets, you're going to think again that you're not. Basically, they're all going to be on lease deals. So if you're a small company, you are not going to have enough cash to be able to fund this. It's going to take hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, just to be able to fund the amount of capital that you're going to have to put out there and all the infrastructure you're going to have to make. And this brings me a little bit back to now the deal that everyone's talking about, which is Karl Storz, and Karl Storz has taken Asensus. So yeah, that's everyone keeps saying it's a cheap price. It's a cheap purchase price for the actual assets, but I think there's a lot of cost that's in there still. If you want to launch Luna, which I think could be a contender, then Luna is going to cost 500 million to launch. There's some debt they've got to service, but I think Karl Storz has also seen the writing on the wall of what Da Vinci 5 has done, and I've written about this extensively. So I don't think that DV5 has been a direct shot with its tower at the tower companies, but I do believe that they are going to be absolutely collateral damage. So Why do I think that? Because the tower from DV5 is fully capable as a lap tower. That means you don't need a secondary tower if you want to do entry with another tower, but it also means that if it's in the operating room, you could technically use it for your laparoscopy. That means that some of the towers, you're just not going to need to buy as many towers. So if you're a Stryker or an Olympus or a Storz, the number of towers that need to be bought by customers for you could decline, and I think that's the threat there. And secondly as well, when you've got all that horsepower and being able to bring DICOM information in, if you're able to bring information out and it's a smart system, you can control the whole OR from the console. You don't really need to build a smart OR. So again, Stryker, Olympus, Storz building smart ORs, these robots sort of take that over. So Storz has done a really smart move, in my opinion, by making sure that they don't become irrelevant in the robotics. So by doing that, they not only keep the tower at the center, and they will put Rubina onto Luna. I absolutely guarantee it. So you've got 4K, 3D, ICG. It's going to be a really great vision system on Luna, probably one of the best to date. And leaving, like, Hugo's going to have the old 3D HD, so there'll be there'll be older generations, and you get your second generation on Luna, which will make Luna much more attractive. But what it's also going to do is it's going to put the robot at the center of their smart ORs. So they'll build their smart OR technology, add to it with the intelligent surgery unit, the ISU from Asensus, which again I think is a really smart move by them. So now it's really up to Olympus and Stryker to try and defend some of their business by also getting into this space. I don't know how they're going to do it. I predicted, and I've written about this extensively, that I think that Stryker again needs to make the tower the hero of their system, because they've got their new tower system. And again, something like a Moon Surgical or a Dexter DistalMotion, which relies on somebody else's tower, could absolutely be a perfect match for them. And it also plays into their ASC strategy. So the final thing to talk about for SRS, as it's upcoming, for people to watch for, are definitely the Eastern systems, and I would mainly say China. China's done a lot. There's a lot of DV clones, either 4-arm or 3-arm clones. And I think that, again, they are very interesting for the home market of China. And Toumai, which is Microport Medbot, recently got CE mark. So I do wonder now if they're going to be the test case to see, can Chinese companies and their Chinese robots and designs gain any traction in, for example, Europe and then eventually US. I have my doubts about that. I don't know why you'd buy a clone. I've always said it before. I'm going to buy a Rolex and it's going to be given to me for free, and I just pay a rental for how much I use it, and it's the same sort of rental. Why am I going to take a clone of a Rolex when I can take a Rolex? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But it'll be seen. I can be proven wrong on that. I'm quite often wrong. So it's going to be interesting, and they've definitely got placements already in other countries, like Georgia is one that I know they've got a placement. But let's see now if they can get beyond that and actually make some traction in the big countries. And again, I think a Chinese system works well in China, and Toumai is the number one home built. Still doesn't beat intuitive in China, but it's the number one home built system in China. So it's going to be good to see, good and interesting to see. Then you have Edge, and Edge did a demonstration just recently in Rome, a meeting in Rome where they did a telesurgery 5G. It was a bit interesting because I don't know how they actually did that without a CE marked console, which was technically being used for live surgery. It doesn't matter if you're doing the surgery in China, you're actually using the console, which is a non-CE marked device in Europe. So that's quite an interesting one. I don't know how they did that. Maybe someone can explain to me in the comments. So you are going to be able to see a lot of those systems at SRS this year. There'll be a couple of the Chinese systems there. So let's see what people think of them and see the clones. But again, the game's moved on. They are clones. A lot of them are clones of the SI, and a lot of them are clones of the XI with some of the much lower features. A lot don't have ICG, a lot don't have advanced energy, a lot don't have stapling. So I just think it's going to be very hard for them to have a nixed version. And again, I think their premise was, well, we'll come in cheaper on the capital. That makes no sense anymore because it's all going to be service model. So can they make it cheaper on the instruments? Well, again, Intuitive are making millions of instruments a year. They'll be making maybe 100,000. I don't know how they get the cost down that much, even if it's made in China. So it's going to be a very interesting period in the next 12 months. But coming full circle, I just think that Intuitive have utterly and totally got it right, have nailed it right, and I do not in any way or shape think that they're going to be knocked off the roost in the next 10 years. I don't think anyone can do it, and I think that you're going to see J&J and Medtronic get a pretty rude awakening as they roll out into the US. And it'll be a shame because I want competition. I want healthy, strong competition because that's going to lift everyone's game. But honestly, in the next 10 years, it's Intuitive. So I'm going to be SRS. Anyone wants to grab me there, then do grab me. On the morning of the 20th, I'm giving a keynote speech, which a lot of this will be in with some graphs and some diagrams. So again, just make sure you come along and see me there, and put in the comments as well your thoughts on where this market is going in the next couple of years. See you at SRS.